Hello and welcome to Dail Talk, the Irish Mirror's political podcast. I am Louise Byrne, political correspondent, and I am joined by Fergal Blaney, our political editor. How's it going, Fergal?
Hello, folks. How are we?
What a week. So we are recording this on Friday afternoon. Fergal and I have had a very busy week. It is the worst week of the year, in my opinion, the week before the budget. A lot of speculation, a lot of trying to find out what's going on. The big day, of course, is on Tuesday, October 10th, where ministers will stand up and they will announce the budget. But Fergal, it seems, and I've done 3 budgets now, I don't know how many you've done, but it seems to me that he's like, don't ask me that question.
Don't make me feel old, but I will tell you that my first one was more than 10 years ago, so that's enough.
Okay, but to me, it feels like this is a very different budget than I've ever covered. There kind of feels like to be a real nervous energy. Are you feeling that from ministers and sources that you're talking to?
Exactly. I suppose one of the spanners in the works that were thrown in during the week, and I don't think anyone really saw this coming, and if Paschal Donohoe and Michael McGrath did see it coming, they kept it close to their chests, was corporate tax. This has been the big beano for years, that we've been getting tens of billions in corporate tax. And they've always said, oh, it's a windfall tax. We can't spend it all. But we do. Every year we do spend as much as we can. We put some into National Pension Reserve Funds, place like that. But it gives great comfort to the ministers when they know that there's going to be extra receipts from all the big tech, the pharma that are based here. They keep paying it. Now, unfortunately, there was a bit of a lull. Now we saw a 23% drop. We heard that on Tuesday afternoon. That's a huge whack, 23% drop. So the theory in some circles is these were windfall benefits that we got in. So unfortunately, the ones that might be targeted in the budget might be the windfall benefits for people, if you get the logic there, the one-off payments, etc. They won't touch the tax bands, etc. with that section of money. They'll have to have more sustainable money, the actual taxes that we bring in, to go for them. But it could be very dangerous that we could lose some of the beautiful bonuses that people were used to. It's a very small mite, but it's put a sense of nervousness, I think, among the ministers. And it's going to be a long and tetchy weekend for all the other ministers who have to go with their begging bowls, basically, to Michael McGrath and Paschal Donohoe and say, here, we want this, and this, and this, and this. And they might get this and this, but I don't think they get this, and this.
Yeah, and it seems, I know the budget does run into the weekend every year that I've been around. It's always that Sunday meeting with the 3 leaders, the Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, Tánaiste Micheál Martin, Green Party leader Eamon Ryan, and then the money ministers, as they're known in our circle, Paschal Donohoe and Michael McGrath. And there is always that on the Sunday evening, but I suppose more so than ever, it kind of feels like a lot is depending on that. And one minister said to me during the week that they actually don't think that things are going to be signed off until Monday evening. And the one thing that they think is not going to be signed off until Monday evening is what you mentioned there, Fergal, that cost of living plan, the likes of your double payments, your lump sums. Now, we do know that we are getting some of them. I think some of them have been fairly well flagged. The energy credits, we know they're definitely coming. What we're getting, we still don't know. I'm hearing everything from 2 100s, 3 100s, 3 150s, 1 200. There is a lot of kind of suggestions, a lot of permutations going on, but we do know we're getting them. The Taoiseach was in Granada this week, and he was saying that they are coming and the government accepts that things aren't as easy as they were when it comes to paying energy bills as they might have been 2 winters ago. So we do know that.
Can I just ask you a question there, Louise, just for a sec? He mentioned something strange this morning, I thought, over in Granada this morning or last night, where he said that it could be linked to the energy companies having passed on discounts already. Now, that's a worrying sign for some people that might not get as big a discount if their company hasn't reduced the prices, or if they have. It's a strange one. What's your take on that? What's he trying to say?
They won't be able to do that. How would they go about doing that? Say Electric Ireland customers get 50, someone else gets 100 if you're with energy. They can't do that. It's too difficult. And I think this has been the argument that we have heard for months now about, we can't target these things because we don't know who has what, who gets what. And that argument is running a bit thin now because they've been saying they can't target measures for 2 years. They could have gone and done the research by now. But I think the government are clever. I know people like to think the government are not clever, but they are fairly wise to these kind of things. And I think they know if Paschal Donohoe stands up on budget day and he's announcing all the goodies and he goes and such customers are getting this, and yous are only getting 50 though. They're not politically naive. I think they can see the fire that would create, and I don't think they're going to let it burn.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I just thought it's a funny one for him to raise. He's definitely got some sort of thinking behind it, but we'll see more of that in the days to come, I suppose. Moving on to some other areas. The big issue every year, they say, is housing and what are they going to do about it. But one thing they can do is the rent credit, which was very successful last year. So it was brought in last year for anyone who hasn't claimed it yet and you're renting. It's basically 500 quid for free, as long as your landlord is registered with the RTB. And you could claim for last year and this year. So this year was a nice double whammy of 1,000. It's going to go up next year. We're nearly certain of that. I know, Louise, that you were talking to them behind the scenes, and we were hoping and praying, us renters, that we could get €1,000 perhaps next year. But unfortunately, maybe an impact of the tightening of the budget purse strings with the corporate tax falling and a bit more prudence entering from Prudence Pascal, it mightn't be that much. And I do know there's been another figure that's been bandied around of around 760, which they've picked because they say that is the average rent that one of a couple would be paying in a house. So what's your feelings on it? Would 760 be enough? Would it be welcome? Can we still get to the 1,000, or is that the air of uncertainty? Is the renters going to lose out a little bit?
Yeah, well, I have been talking to sources over the last couple of days, and one thing they are saying to me is that it is going to go up. That is kind of a given. Now, what it goes up by is purely in Michael McGrath's hands because it is a finance measure. I understand that Darragh O'Brien, the housing minister, was looking for €1,000, which would be, like you said, a doubling of that rent tax credit. I can't see that happening. And what's interesting actually is the take up on this. Now, it could be a case where people are waiting for the new tax year to get the €500 in a lump sum, that a lot of people haven't actually claimed it. So if you increase it to 1,000, would the take up be there? 760, like you said, there's kind of being looked at as the kind of average rent. And now, obviously, some people are paying an awful lot more than that. But as someone said to me, some well-placed sources said to me during the week, people would also be paying less than that. 760 is kind of a peculiar figure. It's not very catchy. It's not very headline grabby. You would assume if they were going to go down the route of monthly average rent, they'd bump it up to 800. So if I was to put my money on it, I would say you're more likely to have 800 than 760, and you're far more likely to have 800 than 1,000. But again, I think that's one of the ones that's going to go right to the wire, and it's one of the ones that I was actually told during the week. It could be Monday evening, could be late into Monday evening before we actually have a decision on that.
Brilliant. So I can't go spending my €1,000. Yeah, spend around 700 or 800 and I should be okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you were brave, you could spend 1,000, but you might not. I think the other one that's expected to be late on Monday evening is the social welfare. I think that's always
one of the hardest ones to do, Louise. You know from the past few years that they can say everything is on the table and you can ask them anything and they'll say, yeah, it's on the table. But you're saying it comes down to, could be sometimes Sunday, it could be Monday evening this year, you think?
Well, it was Monday evening last year. I remember I was hitting the phones last Monday evening before the budget last year, and I actually went home. I was eating my dinner. I watched the RTE 9 o'clock news. They didn't have the figure, which kind of gave you a little bit of peace. And I think it was about 10 to 10 my phone rang, and I was told what the social welfare increases were going to be. So it's very much expected to be the case this year. Now, what I understand is they put it up by €12 last year. They can't, my source is telling me that they can't see it going beyond that, and they can't see Heather Humphreys taking any less than €12. So the kind of idea is perhaps the push will be €18, even €20. She pushed for €18 last year, Heather Humphreys. So the kind of narrative around it now is that it will be a €12 weekly increase. Which
that's an across the board increase, Louise. So
across the board increase. So that would be like your social welfare payments, your job seekers, the pension, all the other ones that you can get. So across the board, €12 increase is what they're looking at. Because what was really interesting actually in some of the alternative budgets, and particularly from Sinn Fein, is that they actually
brilliant. Yeah, I noticed this too. I know what you're going to say. Go on.
Yeah, it was kind of unusual, and especially for Sinn Fein. And we might talk about their alternative budget in a few minutes because it was very different this year to what it has been in the past. But they said they do a €15 increase for social welfare and for pensioners who are living alone. And then the old age pension, they said they'd give €10 extra a week. So that's quite a big difference, and it's very unusual, and I've never seen it before, a case where an opposition party are actually suggesting in their alternative budget to give less money than the government are touting.
Yeah, well, see, I think that is indicative of Sinn Féin preparing for power as such. Because you look at Labour, no offence to Labour, but they're not going to be finance ministers the next time. They've proposed over stages to give €27 a week of an increase, where Sinn Fein know that they have to stand by what they're going to do. They've lowballed the government. They've gone for a tenner instead of €12. I can't believe it. I was shocked to see it. But no, they're trying to say that they're prudent and this is manageable. They've always been accused of being profligate in the past, and now they're just saying, hey guys, we're getting ready. And of course they will be, I'm not going to lose any money in the bookies here, they will be the biggest party in the Dáil next time. So there's a very, very, very strong chance. Of course, the other parties will try to keep them out, but there's a very strong chance you could have a Sinn Fein finance minister. Probably not the next budget. I think this government will go through the next budget. Not sure how far beyond it. But the next finance minister we have could be a Sinn Fein. And
I thought their alternative budget was actually quite representative of that. Like, it was more, I don't know if moderate is the right word, but I think it was more realistic than perhaps their previous budgets have been. Now, like with any budget, and I'm sure like with the government's budget next week, it wasn't without their faults. And that's going to be the same with any budget or any alternative budget. You're always going to be able to pick holes in it. But I think it was an interesting turn from Sinn Fein. Heather Humphreys is not too impressed. I just literally in the last hour came from a press conference with her there, and she was giving out that Sinn Fein has stolen her clothes because last year they were giving out about all those one-off payments, and now that they've put them in their their alternative budget. And what did she say? Something like, I went to my wardrobe this morning and I opened it and there wasn't all my clothes.
No clothes there. Sinn Fein robbed them all. I don't think Sinn Fein's fashion sense would extend as far as Heather Humphreys has very luxuriant. She likes to wear a bit of fur and she likes to wear a lot of jewellery. I can't imagine Pierce Doherty walking
faux fur, I would assume.
A number of the very, very important elements for people looking at this budget next week is they're going to want to know about children's allowance. It's a classic staple that a lot of families rely on it, and it's around €37 per child at the moment. So are we looking at a decent increase there, Louise? What do you think the rates could see it?
Yeah, the kind of some suggestions that it could go up by a tenner. I don't think it's gone up in a while, so I think parents will be looking very closely at that one. I think, of course, we had the double child benefit payment last Christmas. I understand that that's quite likely again this year, and Heather Humphreys is of the impression that worked quite well, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see that. I think the other thing parents would be looking at is the kind of the childcare element. We know last year Roderick O'Gorman cut fees by 25%, and there was sort of an expectation that they would be cut by 25% this year. I'm not too sure how likely that is now at this stage. He, like other ministers, it's not just him, but he has in particular been tempering expectations, and he's saying, look, I'll cut them as much as I can and I'll cut them as much as I'm allowed to, but I also have other priorities. And I think when you hear someone going, but I also have other priorities, that's them kind of saying, I need to give money to other things. I can't give all my money to one area. So I think there will be some sort of childcare cuts, but I'm just not convinced that it will be that 25%. I'm not sure if you're hearing anything different, Fergal.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a hard one to do, and it's an intricate industry as well. So how you target the cuts towards parents, and so that the people in the industry are paid well enough as well, with the workers themselves, and then obviously their businesses. So people have to make money. I suppose one more area I think that's very topical at the moment, and will come up in the budget, but it's hard to get figures on this, and it's always a last minute one as well, is justice. We've had a lot of people saying that the streets of Ireland are not safe anymore and that we need more cops, better policing. So how that will be addressed in the budget, I think we're going to see more money put into Templemore, the training college, so that we will be able to produce more Gardaí onto the beat. But there's also the huge problem of the rosters at the moment. So we'll see if the budget could be an opportunity to intervene there to give more money for wages. And then there's a retention crisis in the Gardaí as well. A lot of people are leaving. It's not a nice job anymore. It's abused, basically. So if the budget can get some, if justice can get some money out of this budget, that might go some way towards helping the crisis on our streets, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand that Helen McEntee is calling for another 1,000 guards this year, but we've seen the issue that she's had with training and retention and getting people through Templemore. So we'll see how successful she is there. It hasn't all been budget this week, though. We have had a few other stories. We've been working away on a few other things. And Fergal, you had a really interesting front page this week for the Irish Mirror about the number of vacant properties that the HSE have. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, this was amazing, to be honest. Now, I did not see when I got the first tip off about this property in Leitrim, in the small little village of Manor Hamilton. I was told that the HSE had a vacant property there and that it has been vacant for 23 years. They bought it for a record price in the year 2000. It's called the Mans, M-A-N-S-C. It might be Mains. I mightn't have the best pronunciation, but it's an old country house sitting in the town, and they bought it 23 years ago. It's laying idle. So what I did then is I said, well, this could be a larger problem. So I got in touch with the HSE around a month ago. It can take time, obviously, for them to get these intricate figures. And I found out that they're sitting on a massive property portfolio of 257 vacant or derelict properties. And they're just empty. They're lying there. We have a housing crisis, folks. And I've got estimates as well from a leading auctioneer here in town, a estate agent. Conservatively, they have a portfolio worth 100 million. If it was leveraged and if there was, deals done with neighbouring properties, etc., it could be worth 400 million. Now, that could go a long way towards solving a lot of problems, housing, homelessness, etc. One of the landmark properties as well that we found out about, some people knew already, is the beautiful Royal Victorian Hospital on Beckett Street in Dublin. It's lying idle essentially since 2018 when the last people moved it. But it's been about 15 years since it was ever really used outside of administration and things like that. So it's shocking. It's a huge portfolio. And at a time like this, the government has to act. So we did the spread and the front page on Monday, and we were delighted to see then that Ivana Bacik, during Leaders' Questions, took the Taoiseach to task on this on Wednesday. And in fairness to the Taoiseach, he has made a promise now that there's a unit inside in his department, so he's taken the lead on this, where they look at the properties that the state has. So there's all other institutions in the state. I've no doubt the Defence Forces have been highlighted in the past for the amount of property they have. Semi-states like the ESB, I know a property very near me that is a very, very large car park in the middle of just beside Balls Bridge, Sandy Mountain, Rings End. That's obviously massive potential there. Other agencies that have huge property portfolios. And Leo Varadkar says that he's going to get his working group looking into all them and developing them and send them to the LDA. That's our new land development agency to get them used. So it was a big topic this week. I was actually genuinely shocked to find how many. Every county in Ireland, basically, the HSE has something there. And we need to act on it. And hopefully now that we raised that issue, it got raised in the Dáil, it got raised in the Shannon as well. Malcolm Byrne from Fianna Fáil, we'll give him credit there. And now we just need to see action. And we will be revisiting this story, folks. We'll be coming back to it again. And we will be giving marks out of 10 for Mr. Varadkar. The headmaster is here telling you now that you're going to be tested on this in the coming months to come. So I think we had another, I wouldn't say a shock, but kind of this took me back this week. We heard today that one of the stalwarts of the Dáil, Brendan Howland, he's been there for 41 years. And he announced this morning, Friday morning, he announced, lads, I'm gone, sayonara. So a lot of people, I think with this is you think, oh yeah, he's old, he's going to, not old, sorry, he's in his 60s, which is young these days. But they thought, oh, he's there. But then when he actually leaves, you think, oh my God, I can't believe it, he's actually gone. So how do you feel, Brendan Howland, he is no more?
Yeah, and I think it was one of those ones, we've seen quite a number of people announcing they're not going to stand after the next general election. And I mean, it didn't necessarily come as a shock, but it was surprising at the same time to see the final confirmation. And Brendan Howland is someone who within Labour, I understand, is very, very, very well regarded. He is, of course, their former leader. He was the Minister of Public Expenditure during quite a difficult time for the party, it has to be said, when they were in government with Fine Gael back, I think it was up until 2016, and he had quite a task on his hands there as Minister of Public Expenditure during what was a really tough time. But I mean, he is a gentleman, it has to be said, just on a personal level. He's always actually slagging me off because any politician or journalist knows there's two benches. They're kind of like couches at the bottom of the Dáil stairs, and I have been known to loiter with intent on those couches. And anytime I'm sitting there, Brendan Howland just seems to be passing by, and he's always like, "Are you still here, Louise? Or are you not sitting on this one today, Louise?" So he's good crack, and he's a very friendly man, but I think a big loss for Labour, and especially at a time where Labour are kind of up against it, with the rise of Sinn Fein, with the constituency redraw that we saw over the summer. They have lost parts of a few really valuable constituencies, and they are kind of in crisis at the moment, particularly, I guess, since Alan Kelly left and Ivana Bacik took over as leader. Well, sorry, Alan Kelly didn't leave. Alan Kelly was ousted, if we're being historically accurate. but they are kind of in crisis, and I think there's quite a bit being said about their future after the next general election. So Brendan Howland, you would say, was kind of one of their only dead set seats, so it's a huge loss for them, and I think really an indication of what's going to be Labour's future.
Yeah, it's he's Labour through and through. I know that they have a candidate, they've had him for a while down there, George Lawler, so he will hope to pick up Brendan's vote, and Brendan will help him to bring him, because Brendan is true and true. He's a Labour man. He's actually called after a famous Labour politician. Brendan Corish was an old Labour leader, and Brendan's father, who was a union man down in Wexford, he actually worked as his election agent. And when he had the bouncing little boy, he decided to call him Brendan after his dear leader. So it'll be a huge loss for Labour, but you're right, it's indicative of a massive problem for Labour. They do not have many seats, and I do not see many that they can add to, let alone hold on to the ones that they have. If you half a dozen seats is not a lot, or so is not a lot these days to make a great impression. You need to get up to the dirty dozen, if you want to call it that the Greens managed to secure last time to grab a place in government. So huge task ahead for Labour. It's unfortunate that they've lost one of their stalwarts. He could have gone one more time. He's a fresh man in his 60s, as a lot of people are these days. So massive loss for Labour. He, of course, is the man that brought in a few budgets himself in his time. So he will be looking across from the opposition benches next week with a very, very keen eye, gimlet eye perhaps, and he will be standing up probably to criticise them for not doing what he would like them to have done.
You can only imagine. I think we'll all be keeping an eye on that budget next week, which is, of course, on Tuesday, October 10th. Fergal and I will be back next week. Hopefully, we will have all the details by then, and we will be bringing you through the winners, the losers, and what exactly Budget 2024 means for you. But until then, we will see you next week.